Okay, so thank you, Bruno. So welcome everyone. My co-pilot, do you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. Kgobati is my name.
Okay, so Kgobati and I are going to...
Maybe I can suggest, Sandra, to start the sharing.
Yes.
Let's look at you first.
Oh, stop the sharing. Oh, okay.
Oh, you can't see me?
No, so I think you need to stop the sharing, and when you'll so that we can see you.
Okay, let me just try and see, because my screen's disappeared now. Oh, there it is. Okay, so hello everyone.
Oh, yes, sure.
Hey.
Nice to see you all.
Oh,
and
that's
welcome.
Did you just join?
Hello, Nazia.
Welcome. Nazia's just joined us.
Hi,
And
let me
who
go
is
get
that?
my earphones. I can't hear you properly.
Who is that?
My name is Mutsidisi.
Oh,
Welcome.
welcome. And we have Nico as well joining us.
Hello.
Hello, Nico.
Hello, everyone.
Here we go.
Great. So fantastic. So welcome, everyone. We're going to start. So firstly, Kgobati, my co-pilot, and I are going to facilitate today. But we do plan for this to be a participative session so that we can hear as much as possible from as many people as possible. So Wyman and Bruno are also with us on deck. And Wyman, you'll be looking out, will you, for all new people and reading all the chats? Is that okay? Then you can let us know.
Yeah. Nazia has joined.
Hi.
Okay, Nazia, hello. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen quickly. Here we go.
Cindy's joined.
Who was just joined?
Cindy.
Cindy.
Yes, Cindy.
Wow, fantastic.
Cindy from
South Africa.
all the way from Cindy isn't Cindy the coach? Isn't
yes,
Cindy
Cindy. Cindy.
Isn't Cindy in
yes,
Congo?
Where are you, Cindy?
I'm in DRC. I'm in Kinshasa.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh my goodness. We should all come and visit. Good
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Okay, so let's head up and start our voyage. So Kgobati and I are going to present today questions and meta questions. And some of you have been with us on the other webinars with Bruno and Wyman and Mohammed and all our beautiful team leaders that have had an opportunity. In fact, I was just thinking this is going to be a really valuable experience because we're going to have so many different team leaders and so many participants from all over. So how fantastic is that? Okay, so these are the two skills, and we're going to head off with questions. So why not start with a question? And perhaps if you think about this skill, because we've covered the listening and the supporting, and now we're moving on to questions. If you think of this particular skill as a meta coach, what do you think is the reason or what is the value of the questioning part of the conversation? Anyone wants to share?
Have some precisions about what the person is sharing?
Yes, very good. So we get an opportunity for us to get precision. Anything else? Where's my co-pilot? I can't see you.
Your co-pilot is here. But we've asked questions now to our participants, so I'm listening. The co-pilot is very much here.
Okay, now I couldn't see you, but now I've moved you up, so now I can see you.
Okay.
So very good.
So we want to hear from you about why do we ask questions? I mean, what's the whole point of the questions?
So I'll go, Cindy.
Cindy.
Because coaching is about eliciting and facilitating new realizations out of your client. So the more questions you can ask them, I mean that's the start and the be all and end all. How you start and how it gives you an indication of maybe how to continue supporting them as well. And it's not our decision. It leads towards clarity for the client, so that we are maybe better skilled better able to facilitate their new realizations or an effective.
Okay, so thanks, Cindy. So I read this great quote the other day. Then I thought, well, actually yesterday, and I thought that I'd apply so much to what we're doing as coaches. And it says, people typically are not aware of the internal questions or the profound power they exert in shaping and directing their experiences and their lives. And by changing those questions, one can set in motion a different process leading to a different result. And I thought, wow, isn't that exactly what we're doing? Because if you think about it, in your mind, as you wake up, you already start asking questions. What time is it? How much time do I have for breakfast? What do I need to do today? So by changing even your internal questions will already put something else in motion. So I thought this was really nice. I don't know who David Rock is, but I'm assuming he's had some meta-coaching training.
He's the founder of, he's the founder of Results Coaching.
Oh, there you go. Thank you, Cindy. Results Coaching. Okay? I'll make a note of that quickly.
I think he worked with Michelle to get the ICF credential criteria list of benchmark. Actually with him right before ACMC was designed.
Okay, that makes sense, because when I read this I thought, normally when you talk about questions, what comes to mind is what question will I ask someone else. What I really thought about this is what this, and even when we do ask questions, it elicits the questions we're asking ourselves.
So we often say, talking about questions that we ask ourselves, I think Tony Robbins is the one who talks a lot about that, even in neurosemantics, that the quality of the questions you ask yourself determines the quality of your life. So if you wake up in the morning and you're like, why is it that I always attract the wrong people? That's like a negative question. But if you turn it around and said, what do I need to do? How, what is it? What's the thinking that I need to be taking on to attract more that which I want? It's the same question, just asked differently. So underlining the importance of the quality of the questions we ask. Because every time we ask a question, it sends the brain somewhere to go find information. And then the brain, depending on the quality of the question, the brain will go find that. So that's why the importance of that quality is brought to the fore.
Yeah. Isn't there also presupposition in NLP that the quality of your question is determined by the feedback you get? Maybe I'm getting the wording wrong. Am I getting it a bit mixed up?
I think you may
What
be.
is a presupposition? It's not probably a presupposition, but it's probably there in the book somewhere.
It's not an official presupposition.
That's why I'm saying, it's not a presupposition. It's not one of the presuppositions.
Okay.
That one, the one you're thinking about is the quality of the response you get.
The response, it's the quality.
The response you get is the meaning of your communication.
It's the quality of your question. I'm mixing up the two. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so perhaps if I can make a suggestion as well, if you have a question, type it in the chat box and then we'll stop and Wyman or Bruno can ask those questions as they come in or share with us. Is there anything on the chat box? Because I just see 5 messages. I haven't read them. Is everything,
No.
everyone still okay?
No, it's
No,
just
no, not just
welcomes.
welcoming.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so what Kgobati and I were thinking, and we were talking last night, and we said, how can we make this session really beneficial from coming from a participant's mind, and we're also saying coming from a brand new participant. So many of us on this call have probably wanting to already revisiting or going to revisit ACMC, and you've done ACMC before, but even if you do that, perhaps go back, right, and a step back and say, as a meta coach, as you know the ACMC process and you know what happens every day, stepping back and taking a position of questioning, what do you think are the really important issues that helping and preparing ourselves for this journey will help? So when Kgobati and us were talking about this, we thought of these few points, and I'll put them through, and then Kgobati, you can start with one of the first ones and take and go through. So what we thought is, with questions, what's probably important is, I can find my click button. There. Firstly, what is the state you need to be in as a coach to, or not have to be in, but what state would you like to elicit when you're asking questions? The other important perhaps that we could would like to know are, what are the types of questions that are important to ask in each coaching conversation? And then we'll chat a little bit about what are the actual benchmarks for questioning, what's really important. So we just brought out the most important aspects that we need to think about as we're progressing when we're doing our practice sessions and we use questioning as a skill. And then some do nots and some do. And Kgobati, I was thinking, if we keep state for last, hey? So we give everybody an
okay.
and then we ask them, how do you? So tell us about the types. Well, the types of questions.
Okay. So are you gonna click? So basically, is that a question, Sandra, or you asking me to go ahead and talk about the well-formed outcome questions?
Yes, go. Talk.
Okay. So many of us, so as either existing coaches or new coaches, we know that central to the meta coaching system is,
Bless you.
Yes.
are these well-formed outcome questions. We call them WFO. Okay. So our recommendation really is that because they're central to the system, it is useful for you to come ready knowing them. It's really useful. So we're doing a lot of drills so that you are, at least you are not hearing them for the first time, and you come ready knowing them at your fingertips. But what is key is to then say that there are 5 very important ones that we need to be asking in every session. And they're in this order, as you can see them. The first one is the what. We don't coach until we know what it is that we are coaching for. And as we were talking, based on all our experiences and the work we do, is that the what helps you with the what is to also ask the question, what does that look like? Or what does that sound like? Or what will it feel like once you have that which you are looking for? So that what question is a very, very key question, accompanied by the VAK. So I want to pause there, perhaps, Sandra, and have people say something about that. But you will hear, even in ACMC, when we begin, we're like, we are not coaching until we know exactly what it is that we are coaching to. And it is also need to be specific for that session that we are working on. I mean, if we have 15 minutes, what are we wanting to achieve in 15 minutes? It's very specific. It's based on what we can make a map of it. basically. That's why we have that VAK part. Okay, so what questions or perhaps comments or awarenesses for some of you who've started coaching this way that you can share, perhaps as questions or awarenesses about the what and the key, the importance of it. Anything?
Out of the people in the call at the moment, how many of you, maybe you can just type on the chat box and Wyman can tell us, how many of you are going to be going through this experience for the very, very first time? Is there anyone on the call?
Yeah, most, in fact.
Okay.
Okay.
Most.
So
Okay. So what in that case? So for those ones, most of them, this is something very important to speak to, right? So Sandra, do you want to go back again to the well-formed outcome questions, or did you want to say something there?
Yeah, I think you said it already really well. And I think just in terms of the questions itself, a lot of people ask me, what should I prepare? What should I prepare for ACMC? How can I prepare? And I always say, you know, reading anything is not going to help you. Go and practice coaching and the well-formed outcome. Those are like the only two things that if you really want to prepare before, those are the things.
Yeah. And then go back to the well-formed outcome questions so that we highlight. So I just covered like the first one, but when we come to ACMC, the 5 that you see there are like absolute musts for the benchmark. They are almost compulsory, if you want to say. You've got to ask the what, got to know how it looks like. We've got to ask the why it is that we are, you know, why is that which you want to work on important to you? That's a meta question, but also it provides the energy for whatever it is that you want to be, for you to want to get out of bed and do it. And the context questions are key. And what do you need to do, which is question 5 on the meta coach system. And then, is it ecological? So as Sandra was saying, go practice coaching. And when you practice coaching, make sure that those questions fit into that practice that you are doing. That will be really helpful for you.
And I think that what Kgobati was just saying now is so relevant, because I remember even my first experience, the one mistake I kept making is, it sounds so easy, but getting the right what. Do we really know? Because what happens is you'll ask them, what are we talking about? And you start going into a topic, and somewhere it gets so sidetracked that you really don't know what actually are you talking, but you're too scared to ask now because you've got all the other things you need to do. So really remembering that what question, how powerful that can be. And the why question, just another one, because you'll see on the well-formed outcome on the 18 questions, you actually ask the why question twice. You ask it, it's up 3 on number 3, and then it's again on number 17, I think it is. And for me, they have 2 completely different purposes. You know, right up front, when you're asking it in the beginning, it's about why is that important for you? Why do you want to do whatever you said you want to do? And then towards the end, it's actually more motivational. You're actually testing. And you know, really saying, are you really highly excited to do that? So one is more about, you know, exciting them in the motivation. So the why question is also an easy, nice one to ask. Anything else, Bruno, Wyman, you want to add?
Can you put back the 5 questions, Sandra? The 5 WFO. What I'd like to suggest to all participants is that you should also know the 18 WFO questions by heart, and also by number. For example, it's number 1, the what, Number 2 is the what. Number 3 is the why. 4, 5, 6 is the where, when, context, and the whom also. And what you need to do is question 7, and that's a very, very important question. And is it ecological? It's question number 16. So you will find sometimes Michael does that. He refers to the question by their numbers. So the suggestion is you need to be able to match numbers and questions. And the other thing I think we mentioned that earlier is normally the WFO questions should be asked in order. So not random, but so to really drill down. But of course, being sure that you get enough information. So my question to you, Sandra and Kgobati, is I'm guessing that one of the sort of things we need to deal with in the coaching conversation is how much should we be asking questions? So how much content do we need to know? So what's your take on that? So to what level should we go and explore and really get into the details?
So in terms of knowing the content, from what I know, we need to get enough content on the what to know what it is that we are working on. So I think the content is most important at the beginning, and then as we ask the questions, sometimes there may be relevance for content. So if we're asking, to understand a lot more what we are working on. But generally in meta coaching, we do not need a lot of content in order to be able to do our work well, because we're looking at the structure of your experience. How are you structuring, how are you structuring your mind and things that are your filters that are creating your experience, and therefore where the intervention might be for you to get a different experience. So have I answered the question? That's, so we just need enough to be able to get a sense of how you are structuring your experience, and then we can then ask questions about it.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so also remembering the funnel normally helps. That the biggest part is getting that right, grounding the what, and then bringing it through there. So as Kgobati said, exactly that. The theme, the context, the process, and then the planning, the checks, the evidence. That part normally goes quite quickly once you've got the grounded what.
Yeah. Sandra, I wanted to say something. I want to say something to what Bruno was saying about we ask the questions in order. We do that, except for in a situation where somebody asks the what is something that may not be ecological. So we had a client at some point who was like, what I want is to be able to forget all about this woman who's called my wife and to just focus on my children. I don't even want to see her. Okay? So that's just like the beginning of, that's what I want. Okay. And so what you can do immediately before to, spending time, how does that look like, sound like, can immediately go to how ecological is that? Another example could be, I want to spend the next 7 days, 6 hours of it in the gym. That's what I want. How ecological is that? If there's whatever the want is, lends itself to almost an unrealistic, undoable, unecological request for the system. And the system not just being you, it's about you and other people who are with you within that system.
Yeah.
Good point. Okay, so perhaps, Wyman, can I ask you as well, just to keep reminding us, because we don't want to talk too much about questions and then leaving out better questions. So at least 20 minutes to go. Just give us a little sort of push so we know we need to definitely start moving towards the questions. So thanks, Kgobati. So that was the well-forming outcome, which is a huge chunk of the questions. Then there are other questions as well that you need. The next one are check-in questions. So what are the check-in questions? So check-in questions are pretty much really easy. First of all, it's about checking your understanding as a coach. And these are generally closed questions. So you're just checking for your clarity. You've heard all this information, and do you know what the client wants? Because if you don't know what the client wants, you check for clarity. And so how you do that is by, this is just two examples, but in one of the ways to say, so what I hear you saying is this. So let me check if I heard you correctly. Are you saying, this is what I heard, this, and this, and this. Am I right? Am I correct in my, or in what I have heard? So those are check-in questions. Any questions on check-in questions?
So just to say that Bruna has muted everyone. If you want to speak, just unmute yourself.
Thank you, thanks.
So maybe I can add something here, Sandra. Michael often, when he coaches, he uses, so help me to understand you better. So often he asks a question, asking the coachee, am I getting you right? So help me, because it's not clear for me. So, and the purpose of really the checking questions is it's checking your understanding as a coach, not checking what the other person is saying is. So it's checking your understanding. So you need to make it very clear when you are asking a checking question that it's for your understanding.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so that was just another one.
Yeah,
so
very good.
Sorry. Oh, sorry, what did I do now? There's the button. Okay. So those are the checking questions, and then the Kgobati next.
The clarification questions. So the clarification questions are us asking questions, for instance, on the meaning of words, wanting to understand, let me clarify, how do you use that word? They're mainly also used for clients, for the clarity of the client, so you understand how the client is using the word. They're open-ended. They also may be, it may be questions from the meta model where you're asking for specificity and VAK and definitions. And we've got for you the sentence stems that you may use for clarity questions. And I've already mentioned that one. How do you use that word? What specifically about stress is bothering you? Or what specifically about that is the problem for you? So it's really a combination of all of the above. They're open-ended, they're meta-model questions looking for specificity. They're about wanting to understand how the client is using the words so that you can have their map. Because sometimes if we operate from our own map, we may think that the word means something when the client actually is using it differently. And one of the things we were sharing yesterday with Sandra is that many of us, when we were starting, and we see also with the coaches that are new, we don't quite ask enough clarity questions because we think that we know what you mean by that word based on our map. But sometimes we may be completely off. So they're very important, and their benchmarks will talk about how many you need to be asking.
Very good. And Kgobati is right, because, I remember as benchmarking, it's one of the things that I'd always say, I never heard any clarity questions. And it is, sometimes we assume, so the client may say, you know, I'm really upset about the situation, and you interpret upset as being sad, or you interpret about being mad, because it could be either or, you know. So really checking how you're using, when you're saying upset, how are you defining that?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so then the next one are the testing questions. So unlike the clarity questions, these again, similar to the checking questions, are more closed answers. So they are about the yes-no answers. And it's about confirming information. So you're also testing the client statements. So some of these could also sound challenging, and it's a good opportunity to use testing questions to challenge a client. So this again is for your clarity, because the client may have said something, but you want to confirm that this is actually what they're saying. Many times it's when they exaggerate something, or they're taking something out of context, and you don't want to tell them, hey, you know, so it's a good way to test it. And, you know, something like, so can you do that? You know, I want to lose weight in 20 kilograms in 2 days. And then just checking, is that actually, can they do that? You know, can you do that? Is that something that, are you sure about that? Is that what we should be talking about? So that's another testy one, because maybe they start on one way and then start talking about something completely different. And very often it does that. They talk about something and it lands up actually being something like lack of confidence, which is not what they actually mentioned. So this is when they say, but it's, yeah, I can't do it because I don't have the confidence. And that's a good opportunity. So is that what we should be talking about? This is testing questions. Any questions on the testing questions?
Okay, what are these? We've done that.
Next one.
Exploration questions. Wow, exploration questions. Yeah, they're usually open-ended. They are very linked to beginning to explore the client's way of thinking, their thinking process, very linked to meta questions that we'll gonna get into. They are also intended to get clarity of content from the client. So it's really open-ended. So tell me about how this works for you, or how you actually get to this conclusion. And the examples we have there, for example, explain how that made you stress. How does that work for you? How does that come about? When you did that, what was playing in your mind? Okay, and tell me about that. So these are different examples of sentence stems that you could use to actually get to understand how that client thinks about something, what the thinking process is for them. So you will see when we get to the meta questions how linked they are to that, because they begin to unearth the client's thinking process.
I normally find these are quite easy to ask. These are ones that sort of come out by habit. You know, it's easy to ask. It's the ones we normally ask. But the trick here, as Kgobati said, if you get stuck in asking about content, you're going to go into information loops. So one thing to be wary about that is rather stick to asking about processing, how they're thinking about it. What frames are they using? What patterns are they thinking? What meta programs are they using to come up with that? So just that little trick, you know, let me explore, because we're tempted to explore the content, especially in the beginning when it's still new to us. Instead of trying to explore the content, how can I explore the internal processing?
Yeah. How are you thinking about that? Okay.
Excuse
Quality
me.
control.
Yes.
Can
There's
we
a
go back?
question?
Yes, please. Can we go back to the information loops? Can you explain what do you mean by information loops, please?
Good question. So
Sorry.
this is when
Clarification question, yes.
Yes, very good.
Well done. You should ask more of those.
Okay.
This comes from, you know, getting that experience. But generally you will find, or I know from my experience, I often feel frustrated because there are times when you are going through your questionings and of course, you know, in the ACMC, you're really under a lot of pressure and you want to practice all the skills. And just when you get one skill right, a benchmarker tells you to focus on another one, then you focus on that one, and another benchmarker tells you to focus on something else. So you have these. But what happens then is in that strength, if you aren't paying attention to what you just said, thinking about processing and content, what happens is you get stuck in information. So you'll say, okay, so what do you want to do that? And I want to do it because of this. Okay, so, and you probably have asked a lot of the well-formed outcome questions, but you yourself are not feeling that this conversation is coming to anything really grounded or anywhere. And then you'll see that the questions that you start asking, the client starts giving you the same questions, the same answers, and you're going into and you don't know how to get out of it. And this is a good opportunity where you can actually stop. And remember that you have this ability all the time. Use it. Stop whenever you think you can't get out of the same the loop, the information, keep the questions and the answers keep going back and forth. Stop and go to your benchmark and say, I'm stuck now. What can I do? And the benchmarker will help you and say, okay, what do you want to achieve? And you have a rethink. So this is just when you keep getting the same information coming out of the client and it's going nowhere.
Thank you.
Or also sometimes happens when you get a lot of information that you're not asking for, and then you can ask questions like, how is that related to this? How is it? So when you're getting we talk about how some clients have the gift of the gap. This is what Michael likes to say, that, I have a gift of the gap. So it's about how you interrupt that and how you actually can get yourself into that loop when you ask those open-ended, the skill of interrupting and being able to ask the relationship between the information you're getting.
Thank you.
So Sandra, you just got 12 more minutes for questioning, and then you have 40 minutes for meta questioning. Yeah.
Thank you, Wyman. So let's quickly just speed up a little bit, which is the last type of question. And this is really the quality control, is to check the congruency of the client system. And by system, we mean what they're thinking about, what the conversation is about, and what's the system they're operating in as you're going through this conversation. So sometimes you can say, so can you see yourself saying that when you, so for example, let's say your coach is talking about a whole thing and he gets to a point where he says, I really need to stand up to my boss, and I think on Monday I'm going to really go up to him and tell him how I feel. Now, he might say that in a moment, but if you really check the system, so it's almost like an ecological question, but you're just checking what's the quality of that information you're giving. So you say, just repeat it to them and say, so can you see yourself saying that when you walk on Monday? So you're almost repeating the same, but you're just bringing them into a VAK system so they can play that movie properly through their system and say, okay, you're right. Maybe as I'm listening, you ask me that question, the chances of me doing that are really slim. So now you've just checked the quality of where the client is going. So it's a nice opportunity just to keep track on where you go. Now, this particular question, just to let you know, is already at a level 3. I just put it in there because it's a different type of question. So I wouldn't, your first few days, I wouldn't worry about those quality control questions. because you've got a lot of questions over here that you really need to focus on. So moving quickly forward to that, those are the types of questions. What are the questions that you really need to ask? So these are the ones according to when you get benchmark that you're going to need to be asked. So we've spoken about the 5 well-formed questions, so those are the important ones. We spoke about exploration questions, so those are the easy ones that we were saying. Those you need 5. The clarity question, so this is where you're asking again how the client is defining specific words.
Yeah, also very easy, by the way, to add.
Yes, they are easy, and like you said just now, it's ones we often forget.
Yeah.
3 checking questions and 3 testing questions. So if you can sort of have this at the back of your mind when you're thinking of questions, you're going to just screen this through. You're going to really get through this so easily. In fact, the questioning skill is for a lot of people comes naturally because you're really used to, you could be in a job where you're really asking a lot of questions, or depending, mostly it's not as a very hard. The listening and supporting, even though they sound very easy, are often harder to obtain. Wyman, anything you want to add?
No, so just I suppose going from Kgobati's point of and Bruno's question as to how much content do you need, these questions will help you manage the amount of content. And so in the beginning, you open up the funnel with the exploration questions, and then you kind of bring it down the funnel and lock it down to one specific what. So these questions are tools for you to actually use to do that.
Very nicely put. Thanks. So to quickly move on so we don't skip the meta questions, what are some do nots? So these are the ones that benchmarkers are going to be listening for. This is the first one is the opening, because when you open your conversation, it's an opportunity for you to use your framing, because you do the framing up front, which you'll learn about. Michael always talks about wimpy openings. And a wimping opening is when you start the conversation, it sets the scene for the rest of the conversation. So if you start by saying, okay, so what do you want to talk about today? It's a little bit wimpy. It's not going to get the client excited, inspired, and motivated to talk to you. So with your first question is a great opportunity to really be punchy and set the scene for the conversation.
Yeah. And so we recommend that you think of really powerful, inspiring ways to start your coaching conversations. Different ways to come up with, so that you are not stuck with, how am I going to start that, and a wimpy opening, because already it will count against you.
And using your voice.
Am I losing my voice?
No, and using your voice.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So that already you are inducing a state of, wow, what we are about to talk about is so important for you, and it's going to make such a difference. So already your client is getting into a state of anticipation and Okay,
so
and then
yes, go Kgobati, you carry on.
No, go ahead, ma'am.
So then some also the ones that we, in the beginning, you sort of get punched on the nose, not literally, but by your benchmarker. For these, until eventually, I think it's the one thing you really we flush out of everybody during ACMC is to not ask leading questions. And the leading questions are sometimes slip by so easily, because if you especially if you have programs like In Time, where you get sucked and seduced into the content of the conversation, and you're so into the client that feel what they feel, see what they see, but then that's beware. Those are the opportunities when it can just come out of you without you even realizing. So examples of these is where the client may say to you, I really don't know what I do, if I should do this or if I should do that. And if you just about actually saying, so what do you want to do? Do you want to do that or do that? Actually, even though it may not sound like it because you're using the client's words and you're doing all those things you've been taught, but what you are doing is you're making it an either or. You're actually leading the client to think that those are the only two options, which, as you know, there's always more than two options to every situation. So that's one example. The other example, we're saying, okay, we don't get too many of these, but I've been to some sessions where I was like, hello, where, you know, the coaches have done this. You know, so for example, someone says, you know, I want to lose weight, and they start talking about a whole lot of stuff, and you're thinking, you're talking about losing weight, but they haven't once said anything about exercising, you know, and you sort of, and maybe you've done it before, you've lost weight, or you experienced that topic, and you just want to say, so have you thought about doing exercise? Immediately that's going to be a leading question. Yeah. Anyone else on some leading questions? Oops. Okay, so the last point on questions, and we're moving on to meta questions. The parts, what are some of the nice do's? Oops, sorry.
Okay. Open the slide. Okay, so the do's are, I always ask the questions about, you know, where it is that the client is wanting to go to. So we do not, remember the questions send the brain somewhere. So if the client is already in a state that she doesn't want, asking questions, a lot of questions about that state would be reinforcing that state, which is in some cases not a resourceful state. So all our questions are designed to take the client to that which is that they want, which is more forward-looking, pulling towards points. So that's an important one. And then only one question at a time. Well, the questions are grounded. I'm going according to the slide. Sorry. One question at a time is very important.
One bullet at a time.
we often find that, for instance, with that VAK, people will be like, oh, what does it look like, sound like, feel like, all at the same time. And that's an example. But there are also many times where actually a coach will ask one question and then midstream think, oh, maybe I want to ask something else, then ask another one. So guard against that, because what that means is that the brain goes somewhere every time you ask a question. So if you're sending it that way, then you take it back, you're sending it that way, that's really jarring for the client, and it doesn't help with the processing of what the client is working on. So certainly do ground your questions. The questions do need to be grounded and need to be supported by those exploring questions that we've already talked about. Okay, I don't know if I'm leaving anything out. So that's what's on the slide, yeah.
Thank you, Kgobati. We're going to speed up now. But before we do that, I want you all just to close your eyes wherever you are and just take a moment to question what is happening inside of you now. So we've been talking about asking these type of questions, the chicken questions, the wealth and outcome questions, exploration questions. As you're thinking of these type of questions, what state is arising with you? What would you say is a great state for asking these questions?
Well, for me, I mean, you hear the know-nothing kind of state quite often, and I would imagine would keep you curious because it's about the client, not what's sitting in your mapping.
Good. Oops. So, okay, you knocked them out. Okay. Fantastic. But I think what's really important is to really check with inside of you. Because what happens with this is it's such a, we all know that, you've all done coaching essentials in APG. The state is so, so important. So if you don't take just a few minutes just to say, am I in that state? So in other words, if you're talking, for example, those two that Cindy mentioned, curious, know nothing, how does that look like? What are the eyes of curious? What is the breath of curious? What are the shoulders of curious? What is the eyes of know nothing? What is the eyes of get those? And if you just told those two together, your curious state and your know nothing state, what comes up for you? So getting that, it's not so much knowing that that's the state you need to be in, but feeling it inside your body. How does that feel? You can understand that feeling and get that in your body. It will help you so much, because when you're under pressure and you say, okay, I need to be in a curious state, I must ask questions, I must go into a curious state. You're not in a curious state, you're in a stress state. But if you train your body to say, this is my curious state, this is what I look like, this is what my eyes feel like, this is my breath, this is my shoulders. If you train your brain to do that, it will do it all on its own. So don't skip that part. I really think it's so important to get your state in. And this is probably because as you go down to day 3, 4, and 5, you start honing in on the skill that you probably need to develop the most. And we all have different skills that we need to develop the most. And as you're honing into that skill, really ask yourself that, what's the state that my body needs to be in when I'm in practicing that particular skill? Okay, good.
Okay.
Everybody all right? Are we ready to knock out the last few minutes on meta questions?
Meta questions.
The co-pilot, we're flying into meta land.
Meta questions. So meta questions, guys, are really what distinguishes us as meta coaches. They are so important. So the question we ask there is, why is it that we ask meta questions? What are they about? Why do we even bother to ask them? Now we have so while you think of that question, or shall I wait? So not ask. So that would be an example of asking a question and not allowing you to process. So why do we ask meta questions? Angelique, sounds like she's on.
Yes, it's about exploring the beliefs and the meaning behind what the client is saying.
Yeah. Yes, about getting the meanings behind what the client is saying. What else? Why do we ask meta questions? Why are they so critical?
It's deeper questioning.
Yes, it is. Anybody else?
I think it leads to a new perspective, which could lead to a new way of thinking and towards a new decision.
New perspective towards a new decision. So just to add to that, to what we've said, and for us to move away in the interest of time. So meta questions are very important because they give us an indication of the kind of thinking that is producing our clients doing. So if we just focused on what we are doing, we don't. What's all that noise? Can you hear it? So anyway, so we're saying that for every doing, there's a way in which we think and the way we structure our mind to create that experience. So, and if we are to make any difference to how we do and our actions, we do need to get into our minds. And meta questions is that vehicle that we use to peek into our clients' minds to see, what beliefs do you have? What values are operating there? How are you structuring your mind such that it's creating this behavior that we are seeing outside? What do you think about that? So all of those key things that enable us to make the impact that we make as meta coaches is centered around the meta questions we ask. Okay,
And
so we can go to
yeah,
the next slide.
the one thing as you were talking that came to my mind is, you know, meta questions gives you an opportunity of bringing the person out of the doing into the being. Because if you think of questions, if you've just done the chicken questions, the welfare and outcome questions, a lot of those questions are about the primary state, the doing state.
Yeah.
Meta questions is your real unique opportunity to bring the person back into the being, into what's happening in the higher level of their mind, in the higher being. So it's a great opportunity for moving from the doing to the being.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've got the same thing. So now if you ask the same question, if you thought of yourself asking the questions of alpha and outcome, the chicken questions, and the state that arose, and it's not the only two states, by the way, but it just so happened that Cindy said the perfect states, because and Kgobati were thinking the same. You know, those are the two that came to mind. What states arise in you when you asking meta questions? What state? Is there a different state? There's no right answer here, but what comes to you?
I mean, for me, you start on kind of, I suppose it's part of curiosity, but there's a tentativeness to it. Yeah. Example.
Very nice.
Okay. I think Sandra isn't it one of the slides? Yes. That I think we came up with something like respectful curiosity or something.
Yes, that's it. Exactly what Cindy was saying. You said, what did you say? What is the nice word you used, Cindy? Huh? You said a nice word.
Tentative.
Tentative. Okay, so that's also beautiful. And when Kgobati and I was exploring this last night, we were saying it's a different curiosity, and it's, you know, it's like and while we said respectful was part of the one below, the empathy, because you actually are going into their map. So it's quite a, you know, the respect their map, because I've had conversations where I'll ask a meta question and I'm so surprised by what they say. You know, when you say, what does that mean for you? And what they say is the last thing it would mean for me. I'll be like, oh my gosh, really? You know, I'm thinking that. I didn't say that, but I'm like going, oh, really? And you in a whole different way. So you really got to respect that their map could be totally different to your map, because they may have different value systems, different belief systems. So it's a whole different state. So be aware of that. If this is one of the skills that you want to work on, what is your state? So it's that compassionate, the respectful curiosity, empathy, and also to explore more into their world.
So we recommend that, as you've seen, we talked about state for the other questions. Now we're talking about state here. I think at the beginning we talk about a coaching state, as your state is so critical. So spend some time honing that before you get to ACMC. We are going to work, I think it's in the program to do coaching states, but then when you get there, you can just texture it maybe, but already begin working on that, understanding that the quality of your state will be the quality of your performance, and really work on guarding that and managing it to the best of your ability.
Nice. Okay, so the next one, what are the types of meta questions? So I'm sure you're all going to recognize the diamond, right? So we're just going to list a few. Kgobati can go, I mean, these aren't the only ones, but these is what Kgobati and I were sort of saying last night. This is the ones we sort of think come up or easy to ask. But any meta question is okay. And sometimes you can even ask the same question at a different time, and it's going to give you a completely different result. So like the belief, what is that belief? What do you believe about that? You could ask that 3 times at different times, that you'll get completely different perspectives of that conversation. But at the same time, beware of not only asking 2 questions. You know, there are sometimes you get so stuck, and that's all you ask. You know, what do you believe about that? What do you believe about that? And by the 5th time, the person's going to like, you know.
Yeah. I was laughing. I was telling Sandra that what do you believe about that was probably the first meta question I learned. And I would ask it everywhere. So like, okay, what do you believe about that? What do you understand about that? So it's a very, so there are different types. And then we also, I think it will probably come in the do's and the don'ts. So let me leave that for now. Yeah. Learn them, know opportunities, where to use them, and just they are key. And we're needing you to ask a lot of them. So it helps to get ready with them and know them well.
Yes. Sometimes it's actually difficult to ask, in the beginning, to get used to asking those meta questions. So what are the criteria? What are the benchmarks? So the average idea with meta questions is that you should be asking one every 2 minutes. Now that sounds like a lot. You know, so it really is one every 2 minutes. So if you're thinking of about a 20 to 25 minute, at least 12 meta questions. So, that's the general criteria. So, Kgobati, you can tell us the do nots. What are some of the do nots? We just put the slides up.
Yeah. So the do nots, the first one is that they need to be grounded. And so if they are ungrounded, then they count against them, because we don't know, you know, like if you ask a question like, what do you believe about that? And we find that sometimes happens when in the middle of it, I realize, oh my gosh, I haven't asked meta questions. I says, okay, so what do you believe about that? And what does that mean for you? Or, you know, so I just sort of throwing them out, but they are not really grounded to whatever it is that we are talking about. So we've got to say, what do you believe about not receiving greetings from people? Or what do you believe about that particular thing? So whatever it is that you are talking about, it has to be linked to that. You don't just end with what you believe about that. They also need to be relevant to the conversation that we are having. Again, we often see irrelevant ones when people are just wanting to throw them in, just so that you can count that you have meta questions. Also important to realize the difference between if you're asking the meaning one, what does that mean to you? Or what do you mean by that? So what do you mean by that? So checking the meaning of a word would be a clarification questions. And then what does that mean for you? What meanings do you attach to that? Then that becomes a meta question. Very similarly, the feeling question around how does that make you feel? That would be a state induction question. So I'm talking into how I feel about my state, but how do you feel about that happening? How do you feel about your son not showing up as you expect him to, or whatever? Then becomes a meta question. So just looking at it's a combination of it being something else depending on how you ask it. So being careful about that. Okay, so that last point there.
No, sorry. I was just saying, I see Chloe's asking a question. She says, how do we make sure that the client is grounded? Well, in terms of the question, Chloe, is that what you're asking?
The question, your questioning needs to be grounded. Not necessarily, we're not talking necessarily about the client. It's you asking the question that's grounded on something. And that's why we're giving the example of, if you just say, what do you feel about, how do you feel about that, is an example of an ungrounded question. But how do you feel about somebody walking into the room and not saying hello to you, is a grounded question. Yeah.
Good
It's an example.
Also,
yeah.
Also the answer, because what happens is very often when you ask a meta question, you get such valuable information. But if you are not listening to that answer, you've lost the opportunity to ground it even further. So very often I've seen that happen. They'll ask a beautiful question and the client actually gives such valuable information, but the coach doesn't even hear it. It just carries on. And then you've left it in the air. So really being aware of the answer. Listen closely to the answer when you move it on. Perfect.
Okay.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you, Chloe.
So, and the last piece, I think, is the do's. So some of the do's is what's on, so as with a meta question, you get the opportunity of questioning what's on the back of the person's mind. Also in terms of how the client is feeling or what they are thinking. And of course, as we said earlier on, it's really going meta, making them reflective. And this is where you can actually use your eye accessing cues. And you can, it's another, actually the eye accessing cues is another way to test whether the question is grounded. Because if you ask a meta question and their eyes aren't moving, then they're probably ongoing meta. They're still in the primary state. So by asking a really, if you'll know that that was a valuable question, if you all of a sudden see them looking down, you know, or really looking into it completely, or looking up, because sometimes they're visual and they're actually thinking, but they're looking at it through a movie. So watching for the eye accessing cues, and this is a good opportunity to also keep silent. And this is where the silent counts. You get benchmarked on opportunities where you are silent. So very often, meta questions are not that easy to come up with an answer. So the client has to really reflect about it and think about it. And as they're doing that, they're going into their maps, into their matrix. So it's a great opportunity to just support them, be with them, and give them the time to think about and go deeper into that meta question.
And just to add there, Sandra, that they also help you to induce states. So you know that when we go further, we'll talk about inducing states as we go ahead. But asking meta questions, remember there we said that they get you into a reflective state. And so that asking great meta questions also gets your clients into a state that enables them to get the best answers for themselves. So it's a double benefit there. You get more than one benefit for that, for asking great meta questions.
Okay, so I think that is it. How's everybody doing, and how are we doing for time? Are we on time? Maybe it was an hour and a half.
Yes, we are on time. We're due to finish at 9:30, so we've still got time for questions.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So
we did well.
I have a question from a participant. The question is, can you give an example of a meta question using appreciation?
That's a nice one, you know, and sometimes where does the appreciation go to? So, for example, you can use this two ways in my mind. It comes to my mind, and like to hear what the others say. One is a client could be talking about a topic that's difficult and that they're going through a difficult process. And let's say they sort of say, you know, I'm going through a challenging time, and, you know, I'm stuck because I can't think of it. And if you can say, well, what do you appreciate about being stuck? What do you appreciate about being in this challenging time? So that now makes them completely see an entire different perspective. I never thought about it. How do I feel? Well, maybe it's giving me time to think about where I want to go. So that's one way where you're actually getting them to appreciate you're asking them what are they appreciating about a challenging time, or another way as well is when you can sort of feel that their eyes are glittering and they're really thinking about this goal that they want to do, and you want to really make it even more compelling by asking the question. So what do you really, so if they're talking about, I don't know, wanting to have more confidence, and you say, what do you appreciate about having all that confidence? What's the one thing you really appreciate about that? So, I mean, there's so many ways that you can ask.
Thank you, Sandra. And as you were explaining that, I could feel really with these questions you are going up the mind, up the different levels of the mind of a person. So literally the person is stepping back, is looking inside. And so what do you appreciate about this particular thing, about this situation, or about doing this activity? It's really sort of it's the self-reflexivity of neurosemantics in play. So, and it's not out there, it's inside. So this is really the power of the meta questions, going inside.
True.
Anything else? So who have we got here that hasn't sort of said much or wants to? Any questions, or not even have to be a question, can be a statement. So I see Viljoen. We just got Viljoen as well.
Yeah.
Hi Viljoen, how are you?
Viljoen.
You don't sound.
I can't hear you, Viljoen.
So maybe Sandra, you can switch to, you can remove the share, switch to represent mode. Yeah. Viljoen. Viljoen, we are not hearing you.
Right.
Any questions, any statements, any comments? Are you all ready for ACMC?
So, Elena?
It's hi. It's not a question actually. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I just want to share, and you say if okay. Meta question I read, it is met a, met a. I mean met an answer, met a belief. Met a belief I hold, and then met a value I cherish, and then I met a meaning I give. It is meeting a, like meeting a. Is it?
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. Whatever works and has great meaning for you. Well done. Yeah. Okay. Nice. That's cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elena.
Yes.
Thank you, Viljoen.
Anyone else? So, who else have you got?
So, I've got a question. It's now you've got the when you do the conversation, you start with the what do you want, and then you start going down the funnel. But my question is, so at what particular moment are meta questions more likely to be used? I know it says one every 2 minutes, but it's not like, it's 2 minutes, so I need to ask a meta question now. But it's, so would you say, are there some questions, maybe let me put it this way, are there some questions which are more conducive to, or some steps in the conversation that's more conducive to asking meta questions?
Yeah. So the question number 3 is a meta question. And you can ask that more than once, depending on what you get. Am I muted? Mute my audio.
No,
it's okay.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, so I often say, so from the very get-go, what do you want? How does that look like? Why do you want it? What is important about achieving that? And when you got that, what do you get? So you could ask that why question 2-3 times, depending on what is happening for you. Sometimes I find, so let's say clients have to talk about making a decision. I want to be able to make a decision. So you could ask, why is that important? What's important about making a decision for you? And then immediately there could be questions about, do you have permission to ask questions? Do you know how to make that? Do you have permission? So there are various ways in which you can bring them from the why to, do you know what you are meant to be doing or what you need to do, which is question, what question is it? Number 7? The one that's important, that number, do you know what you need to be doing to get what you want? So, and then there are some that are built in around at the bottom there, the compelling question, and the one about resources, you can also turn that into a meta question. So I think what's important, the way I train it is to say, think about how for everything that I'm wanting to do, there's a way in which I think about it. And so whether I am still wanting it or whether I am doing it, there will be beliefs, values, meanings, interpretations that go with it. And just find the relevance of asking them so that that which I'm wanting to do or that which is stopping me is, we can unravel the thinking that's behind it.
So what I'm hearing, Kgobati, and thank you for that, what I'm hearing is there are some questions like the number 3, the why, probably the number 7, the number 16, the ecological, and when we ask again the number 3, why is it compelling? These are questions that you can go further and explore more of the frames. But each time, any other question, but each time that you get a chance to understand the frames of a person, you will need to go up, and that's the opportunity for a meta question. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so I was checking my understanding. That
yes, yes, that's the understanding. That's how my understanding as well. And truthfully, I think it gets better with experience. But as we say, we are giving you tips around when to put them, and that you can ask more than one at any one point to bring it in as far as it is relevant and grounded to what you are talking about. And as you go along, then it becomes more natural. Well, I don't know if it becomes natural, but yeah, I guess it gets into more your neurology, and therefore you ask them a lot more.
Okay.
Yeah.
So questions.
What is this Brahma? E-M-M-E-R.
So if there's no question, Sandra, with your permission, I'm going to do a quiz for all participants. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and I'm going to give you some examples, and you just need to identify what type of question or meta question is it. So is it a question? If it's a question, is it a clarity check, testing, checking, exploration, or one of the WFO questions? Or is it would you classify it as a meta question? Okay, so are you ready to start? So just note your answers, and then we'll do the check. And if you can think of some questions, Sandra, Kgobati, or Wyman, So then.
So Bruno, is there always only just one answer?
Okay. So we can debate on that.
So because some can be more than one.
Okay. So. So first example. So is there only one possibility? So what type of question would that be? Okay, so let me give you more questions, and then we'll check at the end. The second question is, am I understanding you correctly that you want to, in this situation of conflict, you want to do this and that? So the third one, in this situation of conflict, what is your highest intention?
That's an interesting one.
Okay. Question 4. So when you're saying you are stressed, how are you using that word stress? Help me. So can you describe what is stress? In terms of what do you see, what do you feel? What do you hear? Or where is it in your body, the particular stress showing up? So when you are in this situation, what do you believe about being stressed? Okay, so let's check your answers. So the first one was, is there only one possibility? So anyone? Yeah, it could be. So it could be testing. It could be a testing question, but as Sandra said, it could be yes. You know, it could be. It could be more. So it could be also an exploration. So it depends.
Understanding correctly.
Or even a meta question, possibilities.
Yeah. I would say it's a checking question because I'm testing the understanding of a coachee, not mine, really.
Okay.
And I would suggest if you ask the checking question to make it very clear that it's for me. I'm checking my understanding. So the second one, am I understanding you correctly? It's clearly, it's a checking question. This is checking.
Okay.
So my advice to you is to make it very clear when you are asking checking or testing, so to make the distinction. So the third one was, what's your highest intention in the situation of conflict? So what's your answers? So it's a meta question. Intention, it's one of the 26 possible meta question. Very good. So when you're saying, okay, so how are you using that word stress? What's the VAK of stress? So this is a clarification question, a clarity check. And the last one was, what's your belief about stress, being stressed in that particular situation? So that's, again, a meta question on belief. Okay. So did you get it all?
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
5.
Okay, so you see, I think it's one nice exercise that you can have is to do some practice and ask questions, and then look back and see what sort of have you been using clarity checks, checking, testing, exploration, meta questions, etc. And as I think Sandra said very early in this session, it's not so much about reading or revising, but more about actually practicing. So get chances to practice coaching conversations, even though you are still novice, but take the baby steps, one conversation at a time, and you'll be learning. So the perfectionists who want to get it all 100% correct from the very first time, so get to reality one step at a time. Mm-hmm. You're going to learn. I see some of you smiling, so I don't know what that means, particularly, isn't it? So, perfectionist. No, I think we are all recovering perfectionists. That's the, that's the, if you are here, you're probably recovering perfectionist. Okay. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So if there's no more questions, we are close to 1 hour 30 of conversation. This is what we had planned. So on behalf of everybody, I'd like to say a big thank you to the co-pilots of today, Sandra and Kgobati. So well done. And all of you managed to join in. So it was a big pleasure to have you on board. We've got the recording, so we'll be sending out the link. And if you'd like to watch it again, because I think there's a lot of very useful tips. So all the best in your preparation for ACMC. Only less than 3 months away. So time is starting to tick. But we are, so from the organizing team, we are very busy preparing, and we're going to have a blast here in Mauritius.
Yeah, we're going to have a great time. I told Sandra I already bought my ticket.
Oh, yeah. So, wow. I think you should be moving to really getting your booking on set, because don't wait till the last minute. You might be surprised. Okay?
Yeah. Actually, that's what got me to get it, because I went online and I realized actually that there were, some of the cheaper ones were already gone. There were very few to get for those dates. I don't know what's happening in Mauritius around that time. Maybe it's peak season. So people need to be aware of that.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey.
Okay.
Fantastic. Right. Thank you, everyone. It was great. Thanks,
Kgobati. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Cheerio.
Yeah.
Bye.
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 So, here we go. Oh.